Welcome, everyone, to another fantastic episode of Double Booked. Today, I'm thrilled to be joined by someone who proves you can mix swords, sarcasm, and spycraft and still sleep at night. He's the architect of chaos, the bard of banter, and possibly the only person alive who can write a fantasy novel that feels like Mission Impossible and the Princess Bride had a love child during a morally questionable pub crawl. I'm talking about the one and only Dave Lawson. How's it going, Dave?
Hey, doing great. Thanks for having me on.
I appreciate you being on, man. It's been something I've been looking forward to since we had this book. So it's been a few weeks. I'm really excited to talk with Dave. So
Yeah, always excited to talk about Corden and how he's the greatest character ever.
I enjoyed him. I'm going to start at the very front end. I know there is a polarize about this guy where people either despise him or they go, I like this dude. I feel like I could get along with Corden. I feel like me and him would have a lot of bantering back and forth, and I understand the dude. I get him. I get him.
Definitely one of those, like, it's so funny because I kind of just thought writing it like he's likable. People will think he's fun, like he's funny. He has a heart, And then it was so surprising because there are people like, I absolutely hated him. And I was like, but he has the same sense of humor as me a lot of the time. And then my wife read the book and her response was, Corden's kind of annoying. And I was like, yeah, but he has the same sense of humor as me. And she's like, I know.
I'm sticking with my original comment.
But it's funny because I love him. I think he definitely grows as a character as the book goes on. And that probably helps him be more likable as it goes on. I think he's well-rounded. Whereas right at the beginning, he might seem a little bit like a fop who only cares about himself. But there's something charming about a fop who only cares about himself.
Right. It's a good arc for the character, I feel like, throughout the story. I thought it was good. Let's jump in before we get into some of my questions for you. We have some amazing people on. The one and only Tim McKay. How's it going, buddy? Appreciate you being here. And then Ryan Skeffington.
Dave also in Oklahoma.
Also in Oklahoma, going to be the leader of the free world before we know it. Ryan Skeffington, put it in the books.
The first indie author that I met. I was out in Oklahoma City area last summer, and we met up. Since then, I've met a few others, but he was the first one.
That's awesome. That's cool. Yeah, one day I'm going to leave my neck of the woods and go out to go through and meet some people. I really wanted to go to Colorado to go to Worldcon, and I originally was thinking about going. Is it in Colorado?
Worldcon's in Seattle.
Seattle.
But
Seattle.
You're right there with that. I think it's called Dragon Con. In Atlanta. Mm-hmm. Like every year, I know a bunch of people go to that one every year. So you're pretty close to.
I know. I'm going to try to convince everyone and their mother to go. Not this year, because it's too early, but next year. I'm going to try to convince everyone and be like, we should all just indie author Dragon Con. Just everybody, all the indie people.
To make it to either Worldcon or Dragon Con next year. It's not going to happen this year. Worldcon, just like Seattle's expensive, and I'll be at work. But I know some people in the Georgia area that I could probably convince to let me stay with them. And then also, it's Labor Day weekend, which I normally would have off work. I'm going to a wedding this Labor Day, so I couldn't go anyway. But it could be fun to go there.
I think if we plan a year out in advance and really get everyone to push it and make it a big hype thing, we could take over Dragon Con. Just take the whole thing over. Take the whole thing over. Be fun. But I want to jump into you now, Dave. Jump into you. So as I mentioned at the beginning, I'm super excited that you're here. We did a buddy read of the Envoys of War, and on Mark's. I know Mark will probably jump on a little bit on his Discord, and it was so much fun going through and reading this book with a bunch of people. But for those not familiar with your work, what's your quick elevator pitch for Envoys of War?
All right, so whenever I've done in-person events and tried to like sell books to people walking by, the first time I called it Dungeons and Dragons with like meets Jack Sparrow, because I'd gotten some comments that Corden and Jack Sparrow had some similarities. I think in general, I say like it is a witty fantasy, has some Dungeons and Dragons vibes, a lot of twists and turns and plans and schemes, and at heart, it's about the characters. So I'll say like the vibe of Geralt and Dandelion from The Witcher, D&D shenanigans, and just a whole lot of fun. And I feel like, it's one of those things I've said before. I don't think of it as a comedy, even though it's got a lot of humor in it. But I feel like it is it's a dramedy of sorts, in that it is a mixture of serious moments and humorous moments, and not just like this is a comedy that's just laugh out loud, ha ha ha, the entire time. Because there's some serious stuff going on, and like there are some moments that are not fun at all, and people almost die or die a lot. So like, I think it's funny, and I would call it a funny book, but I wouldn't refer to it as like a comedy. And I talked with Joe Byrne and some other people about it, and he kind of agrees about his own writing. Is like, I think he's a great example of someone who is super funny, and his books are funny, but they're not just a goofy comedy the whole time. So yeah, I have the book right here, also right there, and this one. But just like someone referred to it as like a great fantasy to get started with if you're not a huge like epic fantasy aficionado. It might have been Molly actually who said that. But I feel like that actually fits the vibe really well, and that it's not something that you need years and years of experience reading fantasy novels to understand. It's not Malazan, Book of the Fallen, or whatever that thing is called. It's not, Game of Thrones. It's a fun adventure story, and not, the heaviest epic fantasy to ever hit.
I agree 99% of what you said. The only part that I would say is this is not a young adult book. So
No.
that I feel like this is not an intro. I feel like this is,
Okay.
I agree, this is an intro to maybe adult fantasy. I wouldn't say, hey, if you're just getting into fantasy for your first time, jump into Envoys of War. Don't know if that's the great plan. But adult fantasy, yes. If you want to get into adult fantasy, I think that is a great call out for this book. It was so much fun. The humor hit. The action was intense. It was so much fun. And then it definitely kept me on the edge of my seat a lot of time within Envoys of War, and then the Pawns of Havoc. So I actually read the Pawns first, which is your prequel novella, and I fell in love with the characters immediately within that book. So much fun. And then Envoys had those same characters in the story, but they're more on the back end of the story. They're more like secondary characters, so you really get to like see from other people's perspective, which I thought was a lot of fun. But yeah, I loved your book, man. So many times. I know it's a good book when I go through and say one more chapter, I got to go to bed, and then like 4-5 chapters later, I'm like, I really need to stop, but one more. And I constantly kept doing that with your book. It was fun. It was a really good time. So super excited to yap about this and hear about what's coming up next within Envoys of War. Speaking of awesome indie authors, we have another indie author. Hey, AJ, how's it going? AJ is awesome. So I want to hear a little bit about, before we get into Envoys and probably sprinkling Pawns of Havoc as in there as well, because I love that book as well. What got you into writing? What was the catalyst that you were like, hey, I kind of want to pursue this whole writing thing?
All right. So I have always been interested in writing. When I was in high school, I wrote plays. And I wanted to like go to college in playwriting. And I had a play in high school that I wrote that was produced by a local theater because I got second place in a competition. So like dialogue was always my favorite thing to write, even then. And then I went to college in creative writing. And so I got a bachelor's degree in creative writing from Oklahoma State University. And then I moved to New York and got a master's of fine arts in fiction writing at a school called the New School, which is right next to NYU. And so I was writing literary fiction, often younger characters. So like I was really influenced by J.D. Salinger, who wrote Catcher in the Rye, among other things, and some other authors along those lines. But wrote literary fiction. I published some short stories in some lit journals. I wrote a novella that was my master's thesis. And I kind of got a little burnt out in maybe like 2011. After I'd finished the master's by that point, I started a PhD and kind of was done. So I stopped that and I didn't write for a while. And then I self-published my master's thesis novella in like 2017, 2018 in one of the short stories. But I didn't really do anything with it. I didn't market it or try to get people to like be on, find it and read it. And that kind of just went by the wayside again for a while. And then I started playing Dungeons and Dragons in like 2022. And I read a lot of sci-fi growing up, and I read some fantasy. And really I started playing Dungeons and Dragons. I think I'd started reading some fantasy like in the 2 years before that. Really started reading a lot more fantasy. And I decided I want to write a short story, maybe a novel, like talking about the characters from our Dungeons and Dragons campaign and write that out. And so I wrote a short story and I wrote like 5 pages and I wasn't really feeling it. And so I stopped that for like a month and a half. And then I decided, I'm going to write something, but I'm going to write something different. So I did take a few elements of that short story and put them into Envoys. But the characters were totally new and different. And the world was completely different. The conflicts were completely different. The character that became Corden was a centaur in the first story because my character was a centaur ranger. And then but the one scene that is from that, in that short story, the barbarian woman main character, it started out with her fighting a spider. So that scene right there came from the original story. And I had to try to like figure out how am I going to put this into a story where there's not like huge amounts of magical creatures and all these different fantasy races. Everyone's people. And then I came up with the idea of like the enhanced animals and went from there, which has just been more and more fun as I continue writing because I love the enhanced wolves, the wolven. And as I'm writing the second book now, like I'm adding in some new enhanced animals. And my wife keeps trying to get me to have enhanced flying lizards because she thinks that I need to have dragons in my book. And I told her no dragons, and so that's her way of working around that. I think she also wants Corden and Tobias to be dragon shifters, but that's not going to happen. But basically, I started playing D&D, and then I just like, this book just exploded from me. I wrote the entire first draft in 2.5 months.
Wow.
And then went back, revised, added on a lot, took some out, switched things around a lot, and then sent it out to beta readers. Got some feedback there, some good, some I hate this, and then I like revised some more from there. That process was actually great for me because it caused me to make some connections that have really helped me in that moment. So I don't know if she's actually here in the chat, but I introduced her to Ryan, and Ryan also now is firmly in the camp. Her name is Audrey. She's on Instagram. I think she might be on Twitter, but she doesn't really use it. Audrey reads and writes and edit. Audrey reads and edits. She is a beta reader, developmental editor, and I met her because she's in my D&D campaign. And
cool.
I had asked her, because she liked to read, if she wanted to be a beta reader. And so she became one of my beta readers, and she was the best beta reader I've ever had. Like, had so many comments where I was kind of her first beta reader experience, and she was really great. And so I suggested, like, hey, I think you could make something with like a developmental editing career. And so she's taken some classes, and she's started up an editing business now. And I know she's worked with Ryan, and she is just amazing. And so like, I mean, I would have met her without the writing because I knew her before I started writing because we were in the same D&D group. But like, that was really great. I met some other authors that I've started I started a collective called the Secret Scribes, and then I'm now a member of Willow Wraith Press, which AJ is also a member of. And so like, it's all about building community, meeting a bunch of people, and kind of like making, like, I like to meet people, make friends. I guess I'm good at networking, and so that's one of the things that like I like that part of the whole indie author thing. Whereas I know some people just want to write books and not talk to anyone, but I'm definitely more extroverted in that way, and that I want to talk to the peoples.
Yeah, I've heard that a lot from people. They say that's their least favorite part of being an indie author, is that networking and marketing side of the house, which I don't feel like that is a negative towards you at all. I feel like you truly enjoy that interactions and that connection, and just being you, and being able to go through and sell yourself, which then sells your books. I think you definitely kill it, and you do a fantastic job doing that. That's honestly how I found your books, was just like you just being hilarious.
Yeah, like, I think marketing, Mike Molman has put out a hit on me for saying this, but I think marketing's fun. And it's definitely tiring, and there's times when I don't feel like doing it, and you can get burnt out on it. But I've always enjoyed being an idiot, being silly, being a nerd, like making videos, doing things. Like, I have a background in theater. I used to play guitar and sing. Like, I've done a lot of stuff in front of people, and it's just kind of like, I really don't mind doing it. I was a TikTok teacher for like 3 months in 2020. I made videos and met some other teachers through that. And then I kind of stopped because I didn't really feel like doing it anymore. But author is definitely more my vibe of like the content. I have a lot of fun with it. And I feel like not everyone's going to be suited for that aspect of it, but it can definitely make it fun if that's something that you are kind of that you enjoy and you do that kind of thing. It can definitely make some aspects of it fun because I can just do something funny or silly and post it and interact with people because I'm an idiot.
It's definitely comical, definitely very funny on some of the random stuff that you just go through and you do not only on social media but during the lives. It's like anytime I see a live of your viewers, I'm like, I need to jump in and see what chaos Dave's going to bring to the table with your stuff. You find it so comical. You mentioned JD Salinger as a someone that you looked up to as like, hey, this is someone who influenced your work. I'm curious if there's any other big influences in your creative process when you were going through and writing Envoys of War. Could have been like an author, a filmmaker, even music, anything that helped shape that tone and the style within your first novel.
All right. Yeah. So like I said, J.D. Salinger was someone that was really influential for me whenever I was writing literary fiction. Not really. I wouldn't say that that had too much of a connection to my fantasy writing, but I definitely really enjoyed Nicholas Eames, his books, Kings of the Wild and Bloody Rose. And I love the Gentleman Bastard series, Lies of Locke and those books. And so kind of, I'd read those, which kind of made me feel like, okay, there are sort of these snarky, fun fantasy books out there, even though, of course, Lies of Locke and those books get very, very dark. But there are those fun kind of humorous-esque books out there, and it's not just like all fantasy books must be about like taking down the Dark Lord or something like that, or a farm boy who finds a dragon. Like there's a lot of different stuff you can do, and I'm always going to be irreverent with whatever I'm writing. I can't stay serious, but I'd say definitely some of those. In terms of media, I've always liked movies or TV shows where the characters were very fast talking, lots of back and forth quips. When I was in college, I had a minor in film study, and I studied 1930s and 40s screwball comedies, which are incredible. Like the entire thing is just like, how many words can they get into a minute almost? Just like constant back and forth. Have you ever seen the show Gilmore Girls?
Yes.
So that was a show. It wasn't a screwball comedy, but the way that it was written, the writer and the director was very influenced by them. And that if you think about like how they're constantly just like, they have that back and forth banter going and it's really quick. Sort of screwball comedies had a lot of that. And I love a good bickering session between characters. Like characters who bicker together stay together. And so when I'm writing, I enjoy writing those scenes where they're bickering, arguing. I love a good like rivals or enemies who are just like can't stand each other and just like constantly make snide remarks at one another. And so like there's a big thing with romantasy where like enemies to lovers, where it's always like the enemies who want to kill each other or whatever, and then after like 2 books they're in love. For me, I'm not as big of a fan of like the enemies like that so much as like they just think the other person's the most annoying person in the world and they can't stand them and they bicker for a while. And then maybe romance blooms at some point as they are bickering. And like that for me is a lot of fun. And that's kind of the screwball comedies had a lot of that, where the guy and the girl absolutely despised each other for the first half of the movie. And then they sort of, because they're stuck together or they keep interacting, they start to soften toward one another. So for me, a lot of screwball comedies. The show Psych is one of my favorites. And I feel like Jen and Corden kind of have a little bit of Sean and Gus vibes from Psych. And then just Dungeons and Dragons is influential for me because it's definitely brought more, it's like more knowledge of different aspects of fantasy worlds to me through playing Dungeons and Dragons.
So we talked about our hair care and what we do for the first 22 minutes. So you didn't miss too much. I
rub mayonnaise on it every night. And then I sit under a like really bright light and let the mayonnaise kind of cook into my skin. And it's just, it's a way to keep my head nice and shiny.
The LED lights, certain like a specific color,
like
also.
Almost tanning level lights, but not quite, because if you look, I'm obviously not that tan.
Yep. So that's it. That's all you missed in the first 22 minutes. We got into very detailed. So if you want to jump back and watch the beginning, we go deep on the specific mayonnaise and the lighting. It gets very good. So 2.5 months, you got the first draft done, which I find as amazing. That's crazy. I couldn't probably do two paragraphs in 2.5 months that sound half decent. But I want to hear a little bit about your outline process when it came to doing something so quickly. Did you just hyper focus and do an outline and you beat every single part of the story, or did you go like, hey, this is kind of where I want to go, and kind of discovered it as you were running through?
So what I would say is that for Envoys, I very much had like a 1-page outline and just wrote stuff. And then like what happened was I got to a point where I was like, well, that's not actually, and I kind of stepped back a chapter and went a different direction with something to where like, it definitely was a situation where the revision took longer there because I had a lot of parts where I definitely, like, I wrote a first draft. It was like 90,000 words. And then I'm pretty sure I took out about 15,000 of that in my revision process, but I wrote it back up to 107,000 something words. With Pawns, it was a little bit different in that I had an outline of what I wanted. And then as I wrote, the same thing kind of happened where I started kind of going off on a tangent midway through the book. And I had to be like, no, stop, cut. And I cut that part out and wrote a little bit of a different ending that connected back to like what I had planned the ending to be in the first place. Because I definitely, as I'm writing, even when I have an outline, the characters go and do things, and then I have to try to either figure out one, how to tie it in, or do I need to keep this, or is this a part to take out? But I would say the first thing I write is usually dialogue. Dialogue is really easy to write for me. Description is hard, to where a lot of times I will go back and write the description after I've written the scene, because my brain doesn't think that way. It's just, description is not the easiest thing for me to write. I used to always write first person when I wrote literary fiction. And so writing in third person, I could describe in first person because it's like in the character's voice. But in third person, when it's like the narrator describing things, for me, it's just like, that is hard. And so I have to like look at pictures and like try to envision it, or like get a picture out, like, this is what the castle looks like, let me describe it, because it's really difficult for me to just come up with descriptions. And it's kind of funny because I know a lot of authors are the exact opposite. where dialogue's the part they really struggle writing, and they could write a description they could write like a 9-page description about like every aspect of this castle keep or whatever, and just be like so into it. But then like description's hard, and or dialogue's hard. For me, it's like dialogue is the easy part, and then description, it's like, oh man, how am I supposed to describe this thing? I don't know.
I'm also joining Indie Author August. You're going to be extremely happy with Pawns of Havoc. A little behind the scenes baseball. I'm putting together best books that I've gone through and read throughout the year, and I have a category of best novella, and Pawns of Havoc is on that list of best novella that I've read this year. I've probably read like 20 plus, and it's in the top 5 so far this year. So
awesome.
You're going to be super excited to get through it. I would love to hear your thoughts once you get through and finish it. And then we have the man, the myth, the legend himself, Mike Mullman. How's it going, Mike? Glad to hear, buddy.
You know, there's something about being bald that just makes you funnier. I don't make the rules, but they just happen, and it's just one of those things. Mike is one of the few exceptions to that. But,
there's an outlier. There's always an outlier.
He tries to be funny, but it's not quite there. I've heard his new book is funnier. Like I've read Becoming a Druid and it just wasn't that funny. But I don't think it was supposed to be. But I've got that one. I pre-ordered it, so I'll have to read it here pretty soon. I'm doing there's a Facebook group called Indie Fantasy Addicts that I'm in that does like a summer reading challenge type thing. So I'm doing that right now. So I'm trying to not read any sci-fi because I'm trying to only read indie fantasy to like go toward my summer reading challenge. But I love sci-fi. I read a lot of it. And I do have something to say about writing sci-fi, and I'll get to that whenever we talk about future projects.
Awesome. So when you're not writing or editing, is there a secret obsession that people don't know about you, Dave, that you enjoy doing? Lemonade?
Sparkling water. So I've got a few obsessions. I am obsessed with sparkling water. I drink it all the time. It's amazing. I also am obsessed with coffee. So sparkling water and coffee are the two greatest things ever. I'm a huge dog person. I love all the dogs. During the summer, I do a lot of like dog sitting for different people. But I'm a high school teacher. So during the school year, I am dealing with 15, 16-year-olds. I've been teaching 10th grade, and I was the theater director at a school, but it was a 45-minute commute, sometimes 50-minute commute. And I have moved to a school that's closer. It's only about 20 minutes. So I really liked my old school, and I really enjoyed my theater kids, but it was so far away, and my wife and I are trying to start a family. And so I was like, I need to be a little bit closer. So that'll be starting up here in a few weeks. So we'll see what happens there. But I am not directing any theater anymore because that just wasn't something they needed at the new school. So I have more time now. So I'm hoping that will lead to more writing. I do some editing on the side for people, mostly like editorial assessments and developmental editing. So like plot, characters, character development, things like that. I am not a copy editor because that requires too much focus, and I am an undiagnosed ADHD guy. And it just gets worse and worse as I get older. But in general, I have to kind of be on the move a lot because I'm just like, I need to be doing something, because if I'm not doing something, then either the ADHD takes over and I need to do something, or I have a lot of anxiety and I'll just start being really anxious. So if I do something, the anxiety starts to go away a little bit. But that is an inside look at me. Yeah.
That's awesome. I am also a huge fan of coffee. Before BookTube, so this was, I think it was 2023, 2022, I decided that I wanted to roast my own coffee beans. So I attempted that for a little while. It is not as easy as you would think it is when you try to do it on a grill. I tried to do it on the
Oh,
grill
wow.
outside. Like I was, yeah, had a smoker and I tried doing it and it did not work out well at all. So it lasted like a month of me trial and error. And I was like, I'll just go back to just buying fancy coffee.
I mean,
Let the world take them.
I make coffee at home. I also buy coffee at coffee shops. I actually met with Glenn from Twitter. I think his Twitter handle is like Glenn with two N's. He's a reader on Twitter. He came through. He met with JL Odom, who won SFBO, SPFBO. He met with ZB Steel. He's met with some other different people, but like he drove through Tulsa and I met up with him in a coffee shop and talked to him, gave him some books. So that was my first, I called it my first fan club meeting. It was just him and his wife, but you know, for me, it was a fan club of sorts. So coffee's amazing. One of the things I've tried to do, well, I'm thinking about doing, so I love beer, but I'm gluten-free and I'm also not drinking right now.
Mm-hmm.
So like most beers have gluten in them, and because it's all barley and barley has gluten in it. So I like the hop waters, which are sparkling water but with hops in them, and they're expensive. So I'm trying to figure out like how could I make hop water at home without actually being a brewer, because I have no idea how to do any of that. And so I've looked it up and it looks a little bit too complicated for me, but I'm still going to try to see if there's a way to do it. But yeah, just sparkling water, the greatest.
I think you could figure it out. I got faith. I think you could do it. I think it'd be awesome of you going through and showing all of us how it's done with your hoppy sparkling water. So when you were teaching full time and you had to do all that driving and being the director, how did you have time to go through and write? What did your typical writing day look like for you when you were doing that?
So, my wife was asking me a question. Just before I answer the question, there's a light right here that's out, and she was asking me if I needed another light because she's supportive and wanted to like make sure my lighting was good. But if I turn on another light, my head will just be even shinier. So I had a spreadsheet, and I had like on the weekdays I wrote 1,000 words a day, and on the weekends I wrote at least 2,000 words a day, and I made myself write. So like I wrote the first draft from January to March of 20. So I guess let's see. Yeah, it was from January to March. And so like I was directing a musical at the time. So I was at rehearsals Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday until 6 or 7. And then driving home the 45 minutes. I'd get home around 7 to 8. I'd eat something if I hadn't eaten already, get out my computer and write until I got my 1,000 words a day. And like it was all I really did. I love soccer. Went to a soccer game with my brother in probably April or something, and I said something along the lines, "Yeah, I haven't really paid attention to soccer this year." And he's like, "Well, yeah, all you've done the last 3 months is right." And I really it was that hyper focus of sorts, and I really did burn myself out writing Envoys, because I think I put too much pressure on myself to write every single day and just like always get a certain amount of words done. And so whenever I finished it, I needed a break. I took some time off. I started writing Pawns because I didn't want to go straight into book 2 because I needed a break from that part of the story. So I wrote like the first 13,000 words of Pawns, and then I didn't write for 2 months.
Oh, wow.
And then I came back and I cut some of those parts of Pawns and wrote it out to its full 26,000 words, did some revisions, sent that off to a few of my writer friends to read. They gave me some feedback. I made some edits, sent it to beta readers. But it was definitely something where I needed some time off from writing, and especially when you're releasing books as well. People call it the post-release blues, where you're kind of like, you release something and you're just like sitting there looking at your sales numbers thinking, why am I doing this? And I've been really pretty successful with my books so far in terms of finding readers, getting ratings and reviews, selling books. But like at the same time, compared to like other people, you look and you compare yourself and you're like, oh my gosh, they released after me and they're just blowing me out of the water. And so it's hard to like not compare yourself to others who are doing better than you, and just like try to continue writing books. But I've written probably about 30,000 words since the start of May. So on 2 different projects, but like I've managed to get some words done this summer. And I have a pretty clear picture of where those are going. So I'm feeling pretty good about writing right now. I'm trying to get some done each day, or if I don't get any writing done on a particular day, at least like maybe think about it and make a few notes or something like that, and trying to not put as much pressure on myself to do it every single day and get a certain amount done every day, because I was kind of making it not fun. And I want to have fun when I'm writing. I'm writing these books for fun. This is not like sure, I sell books, but like this is not my business. I don't make enough money to pay bills or anything like that. I'm still in the red on Envoys, and I've made back a pretty good amount of money, but like I spent a lot producing it. And so like this is not a business where I am, able to do this full time or even make a profit off of it right now. So like it's a hobby, it's a labor of love, and it's something I enjoy doing and I want to have fun doing. And I have to like take the steps to make sure that I'm continuing to have fun and not just burning myself out or worrying constantly about not getting enough done.
Right. Yeah. Well, and it's all on you. You put this on pressure on yourself of going through and be like, I want to go through and hit these goals every single day. What made you decide on the 1,000 words a day? Did you watch a video? Did you watch one of the Sanderson videos and he tell you to do 1,000 words a day?
I think it was just like I was writing and I could write about 1,000 words in an hour and a half.
Oh, nice. Okay.
And so it'd be like, I have a little bit of money. I saw Mike's comments. I have a little bit of money. I don't anymore. I had a little bit of time each day, but not like, several hours. And I would try to write for an hour. One of the things that I would do when I was driving home from work that really helped was I would, turn on the voice note thing on my iPhone and talk to myself about things that I planned to maybe write that day. And then I'd get home and I'd listen to that and be typing as I was listening to it. And that really did help me to like kind of think through the scene before I wrote them. And that helped me to be a little bit more like get things done on those weeknights whenever I got home at 7 p.m. and I was like, I need to write words, but also brain no work, tired. So it was a way to kind of talk myself through some scenes and then write them. On the weekends, I had more time, and I would try to write more. There were days I'd write 4,000 words, and it'd just be like the words were coming out of me. And there were other days where it was really a struggle to try to get to 1,500, and I'd have like I need to get 2,000 done a day. But if I do 4,000 on Saturday, I can do 1,000 on Sunday, and we're golden. Like we're still over the 2,000 per day thing, and I still have a spreadsheet that I will use to kind of like keep me set as like how many words do I have right now, and what is my goal. But I'm not doing as much of like a day by day. This is how many words I must write, because I am sort of trying to take it easier.
Yeah.
One of the problems as a writer whenever I was in graduate school was that I loved writing, but it was so much of I had to be in the mood. And so there would be months where I probably wrote like 4 words, and other months where I wrote 3 short stories or something like 30,000 words, or just because I had to the muse had to be there for me to write something. And I think I know if I just wait for the like something to happen and be like, I want to write, I'm probably not going to get enough writing done. And you have to sort of push yourself through and be like, okay, I am not really that in the mood, but I need to write something. I need to get some words down, because if I wait to feel inspired again, it might be another month. So making myself write some things, even on those days when I'm not super inspired. And the thing is, once I start writing, I usually start to get into the scenes. And the easiest thing for me to do is write the dialogue and sort of get some scene where Corden's being witty and Jen's going, oh my God. And, write something like that, figure something out from there. Right now, the hardest thing with book 2 is sort of trying to weave some different stories together, because it is a book 2 and there's threads from book 1, new characters I'm adding in, characters that are in different places than they were at the start of book 1, and sort of trying to weave things back together. So I'm writing a bunch of different scenes, but some of them are like, I'm going to write this scene that is a little bit later on in the book because I know what's going to happen here. And I'm still trying to figure out how I'm getting from this point to this point, that little part in the middle. Like I know what's going to happen, but it's a harder scene to think through. So I'm kind of like, I'll come back to that one whenever I have the inspiration for that scene, but these other scenes that I know are going to happen, I'll write those now. So we're trying that out, see how that works. With Envoys, I mostly wrote it in pretty chronological order. There were parts that I'd be like, I don't feel like writing that scene, and I'd write out a little like paragraph of what would happen and then jump to the next scene and write that. But it was pretty chronological, whereas I'm kind of jumping around a little bit more as I write the book 2.
So you mentioned something, and I need to go back and ask this question. You said you used a voice recorder on your phone, and being as someone who does dialogue first, and that's your passion based off of your playwriting, your college years, dialogue's really your passion. When you were on the voice recorder, was it mostly dialogue, and were you using different voices?
What I would say is that I probably did more of the like actual other stuff whenever I was talking, because like dialogue's the easy part.
Yeah.
So like whenever I'd be sort of like saying what was going to be happening in the scene, but sure, I definitely had some dialogue in there. And for sure, every time I say anything with Cord, like as I'm writing right now, I'll sometimes read things out in Corden's voice just to like make sure that they feel sufficiently Corden. But he's got this sort of stuffy British voice, and he'll just be like, "Oh dear, Jen, don't worry, I've got a plan." So I do my Corden voice a lot. I cannot do so. Like Jen just has sort of a normal voice. My audiobook narrator has a great voice for Jen. She's sort of like from Northern England. I can't do that accent, so like I don't even try to do the accent that he did for her.
Well, if you find your voice recording, I think you need to spread the love to the world and let us listen to you doing different voices. Like I could just picture you in the car driving home from work, and then you're like having a conversation between you, Jen, and Corden with 3 different voices while you're driving. I find that hysterical.
I mean, those definitely exist. I will say there's an author. I don't know if you've interacted with him much, but N.J. Alexander, who wrote Fogbound, this book right here.
It's on my list. It's on my list. I've not read it yet.
Nick is awesome. He and I just started a booktube show the other day, actually, where we're doing roundtables with authors, editors. We're going to do some with reviewers and booktubers and stuff. So I'll get in touch with you about coming on one of our roundtables. But he told me that every time I use an accent, it makes him sick inside. So I probably do need to do more accents because of that.
Oh man, that's so funny. We have some amazing people that jumped on. Hey Molly, how's it going, buddy? And then the amazing Ro. How's it going, Ro? Appreciate you being here, buddy.
The more amazing Ro's over here in my house.
Is NK Alexander bald?
Mike has had Nick on the show several times. Nick has this glorious head of hair. Whereas, so obviously he's not as cool as Mike and I, but you know.
Well, he's not funny, is what you're saying. Just roundabout saying he's not funny.
He thinks he's funny, but you know, it's hit and miss with him.
I get that. All right, I want to jump in now to your book.
Yeah.
I want to understand a little bit. So the original story was the D&D story. So pivot back before we jump into this. Do you still do D&D? You still do that now?
Yeah. I play like twice a month.
Nice. Do you do it?
It was like every Monday, but it's a little bit less often now.
Do you do it virtually? Do you do it in person?
Virtually.
Virtually.
It's easier to find people and do the whole, like, just set up a group and you do it online, and it's a lot easier than trying to like get everyone to one place.
That's cracks me up. It's a cop out for poor combing skills. Like, so funny. Awesome. Yeah. Okay. Do you do it over, like, what app do you use? Do you use like Discord when you're going with them?
So Discord a lot of times for like the voice. And then I've used Roll20 and D&D Beyond. Roll20 used to be pretty good, but it's kind of fallen apart recently. D&D Beyond is the one that is like owned by Wizards of the Coast, which owns the Dungeons & Dragons stuff. And they've done a lot of work to their website recently where they have a pretty decent like system set up there. But I think I found it by like just joining some Facebook groups that were like looking for a game and responding to them and trying some out. And some of them were terrible and some of them were fun, and just kind of went from there.
Fun.
But it was a good experience. I met some great people, including Audrey, who I was talking about earlier, and some of my other people in my campaign that I'm in right now have bought my books. One of them has read the books, so you know. Pretty cool.
It's a plus. That's a plus. Yeah, I did one virtual campaign 2 years ago. That was my first one doing it virtual. Every other one I've done in person. So it's like, it was my first time doing it, it's different. It's still fun, and it's cool to be able to just do it on my couch and not have to drive anywhere, which is cool. But yeah, that's cool.
I've done it in person before, but it's just like it's harder to make that happen.
Well, make it happen, set the time up, and actually like, all right, we're going to spend a while hanging out. So it's just setting that time and being able to do that with once I'm married, it was nearly impossible. Now with kids, it's like, it's not going to happen. It's not going to happen. All right. Just curious, because for this question, the first question I have for you about Envoys, I love the dynamic. And we spoke about this a little bit so far between Jen and Corden. And I want to hear a little bit from you on how did you go through and shape that tension between these characters where they don't like each other, but
they love each other.
Yet they love each other, and it fits so well within the story between these characters. And I'm curious how you went through and shaped these and be able to go through and do that.
So I would say the first thing I definitely wanted to make sure I did was I did not want there to be any romantic tension between the two of them, because it was a story about their friends. Men and women can be friends. They don't need to always be romantic interests. And I feel like there have been a lot of shows, movies, books where like seemed like they were going to be friends, and then at the end they're like, well, we don't really know what to do. They're married now. And I just was kind of like, they are not going to be a romantic pairing. And a lot of times, if you think about, people are friends with other people who are very different from them a lot of times, who do things that they would never do. And so in this case, Jen is kind of, she's pretty down to earth and enjoys her wine and dogs and hanging out with their friends and her sword. And then Corden is very much the exact opposite, but they've been traveling together for a while and they've grown close. And so they're best friends while also constantly bickering, because Corden is just always doing something to get to just mess things up. And so for Jen, she's kind of like, she loves Corden. She's also like, oh my God, all the time. And it's just, you know, it was fun for me to have the dynamic of, you have those friends that you're just like shaking your head at them, but you still love them. And I think for Jen, it was kind of one of those situations. I love a good buddy cop type movie, buddy story. And while I wasn't really like thinking of that as while I was writing it, I have gotten some reviews afterwards that called it sort of like a fantasy buddy movie, but as a book. And I'm like, I mean, I think that actually fits pretty well. Like that connects, because there is a lot of bickering, but they're like, they do care about each other a lot. And so for me, I tried to make a lot of those relationships as like realistic as possible, in that people do not always get along with their friends. People get pissed at their friends and don't talk to them for days, and then they're best friends again. People are like, they're one of my best friends, and I absolutely cannot stand them when they do this one thing. Like, so it's just kind of like, I tried to be more realistic with how relationships work, and not just like they're friends, so they always are happy and love each other. Because while friendships can work that way, I feel like the really close friendships have a lot more ups and downs and back and forths.
I cannot agree more. I really like the fantasy buddy cop. I think that is the perfect like snippet of what this book has, that big dynamic with. I never thought about a fantasy buddy cop until you just said that. And I said, yeah, that hits exactly what this is. It is definitely a fantasy buddy cop. And I love buddy cop movies. Like I like, they're so much fun. And it's because of that banter. What goes in my head is I recently watched the original Lethal Weapon, and I feel like it's a good movie.
Have you ever seen Midnight Run?
Midnight Run, maybe.
Midnight Run is one of the best ones. Robert De Niro, and he's like think he's a cop, and the other guy's a mafia informant, and he's trying to like keep him alive so that he can snitch on the mafia, but they just like they spend the entire movie just bickering, and it's hilarious the whole time. It's from the early 80s, but like I love a buddy cop. I'd say the biggest difference here is that usually it's like two people who cannot stand each other ever, who then have to sort of figure out how to work with one another. Jen and Corden are friends already, but they also constantly get on each other's nerves, especially Corden getting on Jen's nerves.
So, perfect segue to my next question about Corden. I feel like Corden walks that fine line between genius and please stop talking constantly throughout this book. Did you ever have to pull back on his dialogue, or did you go, you know what, I'm going to lean in full into Corden being Corden?
There were definitely some times, especially when like with early readers, alpha and beta readers reading and being like, maybe he should, like, he's maybe being successful too much here. Like he was talking his way out of situations, and like I think it works sometimes. Some of these people he's talking to are not super smart, but I had to kind of rein him in a little bit and not make it to where he was just like always able to talk his way out of things, and make it a little bit more like he tries, but he fails just as much. I'd say the thing about him is that he is very smart. And he is also, I mean, it's true. It's what I do. Corden's really smart, and he does have a lot of good plans, but his whole thing is that he like goes way too far with the idea and like adds in stuff that is probably kind of excessive because he likes the theatrical side. And like his original idea is not bad, but he's like, we need to do this, this, and this, and add this in, and we need to do this as well. And if he would just sort of rein himself in, or if others would kind of try harder to rein him in, and that's something I'm doing as I'm writing now. I'm like having characters step in and be like, shut up to him a little bit more, which happens as Envoys goes on as well. But like, I think the thing about him is that he's very intelligent and he knows he's really smart, but Scott is saying here, like he does sort of do that, and I love that whole like playing a different character, pretending to be someone, constantly sort of improving to try to get out of situations, and it works sometimes and it doesn't work other times. And for me, I love that kind of character who's just like, he's not a fighter and he knows he's not a fighter and he's not going to win a fight. So his first, like, who's some other character? I don't know who that guy is. But he's kind of, he knows like the only way I'm going to get out of this is if I talk my way out of it or Jen kills some people. Like, because I am not physically going to be able to defeat any of these people. And so I think for me, that's a lot of fun because I like having characters who are not always just, the best fighters who can always beat everyone. And I like someone who, I mean, I would say Corden's brave in his way, but he's also a little bit of a coward sometimes. And he's like, I'd rather not do that. Let's see if I can talk my way out of this. For me, that's a lot of fun.
So what part of Envoys of War are you most proud of? Is it a character arc? Is it a twist, or was it a certain joke? Is there one certain part of the book that you're like, hey, this is my favorite part of this book?
I would say I think there are some scenes between Jen and Corden as the book goes on where some of the like especially Corden kind of drops his I'm so funny, wit, and like gets serious with her. And some of those scenes, I really like what I did with the characters. I really like Corden's character arc. I feel like he has, I feel like he has a really cool character arc from the beginning to the end of the story. And like, obviously, he hasn't completely changed, but he definitely make some changes as things go on because of what's happening, and he definitely cares more about people that are not himself by the end of the story. I'd also say a part that was not in any of the drafts until post beta read revisions. Tobias's godson Topper was just kind of like this kid who worked for Tobias. And it was just like, he's this kid. He really did not have much of a role in the story. And Audrey kind of said to me, like, he's sort of forgettable right now. And I don't really like, what's he in the story for?
Mm-hmm.
Beyond Tobias needs a henchman. And so one of the things I did in those later parts or in later revisions, was I really put in a lot more of a relationship between Tobias and Topper, and like focused in a lot more on like kind of giving Tobias a little bit of that humanity and the person he cares for, and to soften him a little bit, but also making Topper a little bit of like a voice of reason in points. And some of those scenes between them, I really enjoyed writing. It's funny because like I'm talking about, like, I love all the funny scenes and all the witty dialogue and everything. But I think some of those more serious bits where characters like kind of dropped the banter to actually have those serious discussions, some of those are the moments that I'm like, I really like what I did there.
I am cracking up over here. The people in the chat are killing me. So anyone who has not read this book is going to be should be super intrigued on who Corden is. So we got Corden, who is Joey Tribbiani from Friends, but also Eddie Murphy in Beverly Hills Cop. So a mixture of both, who are both amazing characters by themselves, but blending into one character in a book is just like, if I've not read this book, I'd be like, I need to understand more about this guy.
He has a lot of, like, if you've ever read or watched any of the like Regency era, like, so my mom is a huge Jane Austen person.
Mm-hmm.
It's like growing up, I read all the Jane Austen books. We watched every single different movie version, a lot of those. And like, if you look at like Pride and Prejudice or something, there's always like sort of the rakish guy who is sort of flirtatious and will basically, he's handsome and he knows it, and he flirts with just about everyone he sees. I think Corden definitely has that sort of the rake from a Regency romantic story element as well. Lucas says he has a little Zoolander in it. Lucas, I don't know if you know this about me, but Ben Stiller did not create Blue Steel. Me as like a 9-year-old, I did.
He made it. He stole it. That's what happened.
He stole it from me.
He stole it. Like, he owes you royalties for.
He does. I'm a millionaire somewhere.
Yep. Oh my goodness. So crack me up. So Envoys of War, to me, when I went through and read it, had a underlining theme of loyalty for people, for purpose. But for you as the author, I'm curious, what message or feeling did you hope readers walked away from after finishing Envoys of War?
I think for me, it all comes down to friendships and personal relationships. And I think for me, like, the message of like, friends are important, relationships are important. People will do just about anything to protect the people they love. I also would say, like, from a more worldwide standpoint, sort of the idea that nations and national pride is sometimes kind of a little bit of a um, something that you can just be like so obsessed with, like, I am from this nation and we are the greatest. And like there are people in other nations that are, good people too, just like you. And like I would say, like, nationality maybe doesn't matter as much as people sometimes think it does. Like, and like that's just kind of one of those, like, with the main characters were both from Paran, and starting out they're both like Paran is the best, and then it goes on, it's like, is Paran really the best? Because our leaders aren't great either, and this war, there's not really like one side that's the perfect side and this other side isn't. It's just kind of like, in general, people are kind of flawed. And I don't think there's any one group or people you're like, they are right and correct and are always the ones to support, and everyone else is not as good as them. I'm kind of like, everyone's kind of a different shade of gray.
Yeah, I feel like that's a good way of going through and looking at it. It's the same thing. You can even narrow it down more granular and just look at people who are sports fans. Because you can do the same thing. My sport team is better than your sport team, even though they're playing the same sport and they're doing the exact same thing. It's just mine's wearing green, yours is wearing red. So
and
we don't like
there are definitely teams I don't like that much, but it mostly comes down to like there's either a player on the team that I just find annoying, or like I like soccer. I'm a big soccer fan.
Mm-hmm.
And so like in the English Premier League, there are some teams that just have an incredible amount of money and can just buy whatever player they want. And I don't really like those teams a lot of times, because I'm just like, I like the teams that actually try to like build up. So like, if speaking of baseball or so like in the NBA this year, we had the Oklahoma City Thunder win, and it was a cool story for me because a lot of those guys, they either got when they were young or got them through the draft, and so they sort of built up a team, and it wasn't just like they went out and spent $90 million on every member of the starting five. So like for me, I like it whenever I like an underdog or a team that sort of tries to build something, and it isn't just like money.
Paying for a championship. I hear you.
Yeah,
I hear you. Awesome. I know you loved it. You need to continue.
Hey, and it's I think it was a good sort of intro fantasy for someone who hasn't read a bunch of it. But there's a lot of other good fantasy out there. It's not all the crazy 300 pages of world building,
right?
20 book series stuff. There's a lot of really fun character focused fantasy out there.
So many. All right, Dave, we are on the lightning round. Let's go through. All right. So anyone that's not familiar, I got about 9 or 10 questions here for Dave. And Dave's not supposed to think. I just spitball his answer, and then we're going to run with it. You good? You ready?
Let's go.
Awesome. All right. Who would win in a drinking contest, Jen or Corden?
Jen.
Who talks more in your head, though? Is it when you're writing? Is it Jen or Corden?
Corden.
Do you like a plot twist or slow burn more?
Plot twist.
Last book that blew your mind?
Blew my mind. Silver Blood Promise.
Okay. One word to describe Envoys of War.
Snarky. Witty.
A favorite fantasy book that everyone sleeps on?
Oh man. We'll say Theft of Swords, Michael J. Sullivan. I don't think people sleep on it that much, but it's not as. Yeah.
I knew I liked you. That's my favorite. One of my favorite fantasy books.
He's another one of my like guys that I read is like, I like these. This is my vibe.
He is. It's gold, man. Gold. I agree. Favorite trope?
Bickering to friends / bickering to lovers.
To lovers.
I'm fine with some romance.
All right. Least favorite trope. This one's my favorite.
The prophecy and the chosen one.
One book you wish you'd written.
Lies of Locke Lamora.
All right, last question. I asked this to every single author. If Envoys of War could have a theme song, what would it be?
So I'm gonna go with the theme song from the show Psych, which I know, you know that I'm not telling the truth. I know, you know, they just don't have any clue. I feel like that fits the vibe.
I love it. And yes, you heard it here first. We're making t-shirts.
I mean, I'm fine with it.
Nice.
It's not like I don't hate it. I also don't like, oh my god, I need it, but it's fine. But I like when I studied screwball comedies, I studied a lot of screwball romantic comedies, and a lot of it was like bickering for the first half, and then they kind of realized there was more to it than that. And so, like, I'm always going to have a little bit of romance in my books because I like it.
Nice. I think the most romantic book that I've ever read was read Pride and Prejudice.
That's a good one.
My
Jane
wife's
Austen
book.
is amazing.
That was my wife's favorite book. So we went through and she said, read this book and I'll read one of your dumb books. And I said, perfect. I'm going to start very small with this book. I will read Pride and Prejudice. You do something I know you can probably get into. Here's Red Rising. So I gave her Red Rising. I'm like, this one's not too crazy. I think I can kind of get. She read 3 chapters and quit. And then I ended up reading all of Pride and Prejudice. And if the book's not my favorite book, but damn it, she is a great writer.
She's a great writer. She is so freaking funny.
Hilarious.
Yeah, and like Jane Austen's my mom's favorite author. I've read all of her books. I've seen most of the different like TV adaptations of them, and they are like the 1995 Pride and Prejudice adaptation. It's like 6 hours long. It had Colin Firth as Mr. Darcy. It is so good, and like a lot of the dialogue is not from the book. But like the people they hired to write those screenplays just had banger line after banger line, just so much like sort of slightly cutting dialogue back and forth between characters. Just like such a great miniseries. I've seen that so many times because I mean it's my mom's favorite.
Yeah, I've not seen one movie of it. So the book was the first time I've ever read the story or listened or anything with the story. And I was like, wow, this is really good. And her prose. And then we'll stop talking about Jane Austen. But she can say so much in like one sentence. To 1 to 2 sentences, I'm like, I understand the characters, I understand the world, I understand everything that's going on so tightly. She just writes so well. And it's just like, it was crazy. I was like, wow, this is actually really good. And I was like, I understand the hype.
Why it's fantastic.
One of the best. Like I get it. But yeah, I was super impressed. But yeah, I'm gonna check out this series, this movie. You said it's a movie?
Yeah, it's a BBC miniseries from 1995 with Colin Firth as Mr. Darcy. They made a movie in the early 2000s that some people like better. But I felt like they liked it better because it was more like it had more like slow burn romance, and it wasn't quite as well done, written wise, like writing wise.
Yeah, I found it. Perfect. Yeah, I found it on it's on Tubi for free.
Is it?
So if anyone wants to know, it's on Tubi. So yeah, I'm gonna go through and end up watching it. Because
like I said, it's like 5.5 hours long, but like it hits like every aspect of the book. Like it really is, like, what's the word for it? Like faithful to the story.
Perfect. Yeah, I'll go through and check that out because again, I was shocked on how much I actually enjoyed the story. Like I got to the end, I'm like, it was written very well. It was funny. Like her dad cracked me up so many times within that book.
Mr.
But
Bennett's amazing. Yeah.
like laugh out loud funny. And like it was great. Anyway, back to you. This is not a Jane Austen conversation. So going
Bros
back
talking about Jane Austen, you know?
every time, man, every interview brings up Jane Austen. So going back to you. So if you had all the power and all the money to go through and make Pawns of Havoc, Envoys of War into an adaptation, either film, series, graphic novels, whatever kind of medium you would pick, what would be your medium for your story?
So like I think this is one of those things that I haven't really thought about that much. I think like a mini series would be cool.
Mm-hmm.
I also think a graphic novel type thing would be cool, which is like and it might actually end up being better overall because I feel like a lot of times with a series it's reliant on the actors actually like doing a good job with the
Mm-hmm.
characters and then like the directors as well, whereas a graphic novel it's kind of like here's the story but in visual form. For like I think that'd be really cool, like a graphic novel version. We'll go with that.
That's exactly what I thought. I was going through and thinking about it from my perspective as well. I think definitely with your background in writing um, the dialogue first, I feel like you could go through and be like, okay, I'm going to go through and redo this and do the dialogue, and then have an artist to go like, here's the information. Like
Right.
you make it pretty. I'm going to tell you what it actually says and get into your bread and butter of the dialogue side of it. I think it would be fantastic as a graphic novel. So down the line, Kickstarter.
But I have
Kickstarter,
lots of
get it
money.
together.
Kickstarter. Yeah, there you go.
Kickstarter. I'll throw in as many dollars as I can afford. I'll throw you a few dollars. So I think it'd be fantastic. I think it would be awesome to definitely bring those characters to life. Because you have audiobook. You have an audiobook of Envoys. And then do you have one of Pawns? Do you plan on doing one for Pawns?
So the narrator who did Envoys is starting the recording of Pawns right now. And so he was supposed to start over the weekend, but he had a voice cold, so he couldn't. He started just like, yeah, this isn't. I sound like I'm sick, so let me. But that one shouldn't take too long because it'll be less than 3 hours probably. So Envoys was like 11 and a half hours.
Mm-hmm.
This one should be less than 3. And so that'll be fun to get out. Having an audio has been great because people like Mike Molman who don't actually read books, they only listen to books, which is still reading. I listen to lots of audiobooks. I honestly like anymore, I get through audio so much faster. But I've been able to get a lot of people who might not have had the time, or it would have been further down their TBR and like the physical or ebook copies, but because it was audio, it jumped up and found more readers that way. So that's been awesome. And definitely for any authors out there who don't have audiobooks, it's the way to go. You can do them for not that much. Like I did royalty share, which means I did not pay anything up front, and the narrator and I share the profits 50-50.
Oh, nice.
Which, I mean, yeah, if it like explodes and we start making thousands and thousands of dollars, he would make more money than if I had paid him outright. But otherwise, like he gets half of the royalties, I get the other half. Audiobook royalties are not insanely huge to where like over time maybe it'll pay off to about how much it would cost to record it, but for a lot of the narrators who are doing royalty share, it's kind of they are trying to build a body of work.
Mm-hmm.
And so by having some recordings out there, it makes them more employable for future ones. It's like, yes, I've recorded 6 books and I am, like a professional at this, and not like, this is the first thing I've ever done. Like, by having a little bit of a what's the term for it?
Catalog.
A catalog, yeah, it
Mm-hmm.
helps them out. So my narrator had done 2 books before mine, and he's done like 3 since then. So Pawns will be like his 7th book. But I really like the accents he did for the characters.
Yeah, no, he does a fantastic. They do a fantastic job. Like, I enjoyed. I did. I don't know what it's called, where you listen to it sometimes, then you read it sometimes. I don't know, whatever that fancy phrase
I do
is.
that too, where it's kind of like I sometimes, if I'm listening and I'm like, I get home and I want to do more, like, I can read faster than I can listen.
Mm-hmm.
But I can listen when I'm doing other stuff, to where like I'll kind of do that back and forth. Some people do like the immersion reading where they listen and read at the same time. I can't focus on that. I have to do one of the two.
Mm-hmm.
But
yeah, normally what I do is, if I have both, I'm usually sitting on the couch or doing laps around the house of reading a book, and then I'm like, oh, I gotta actually feed the kids. So then I'm like, all right, let me put on the headphones, and then I'm like starting to cook as I'm listening. So that's usually when I go through and listen to stories, which is exactly what I did with yours, because I tried having Kindle up and reading as I'm cooking. I always burn everything, so I'm like, I got to audio book it so I don't keep burning everything for the kids. But yeah, I do that constantly. So you mentioned it. You gave a little bit of a hint. So I'm really curious now, since we got to this point, are there any genres, themes, or styles? You mentioned sci-fi. So what's a different genre that you're looking to explore?
so I have written the first like 12,000 words of what is going to be my first sci-fi novel. Sort of a sci-fi adventure in the vein of like Mass Effect, Firefly, the Orville, some of the sci-fi series that I enjoy quite a bit. So I've written, it's in first person, so a little bit of a different vibe, but I've had some fun with that. I kind of, after Pawns, I wanted to write something a little bit different for a bit, so I wrote some of that, and now I've gotten back into writing book 2 of the Envoys series, which is The Mayhem of Scoundrels, which I think that name just like fits the vibe so well. If I had any complaint about my first book, it would be, I feel like the title didn't quite give the vibe, and then also the cover is okay, but I didn't really know what I was doing. And I think the cover for Pawns was definitely better.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm working on doing a new cover for Envoys, and then I also have a cover for the second book in the works as well. But I'm gonna do a updated cover. Can't change the name of the book now, but I feel like the Envoys of Chaos might have been a better name for the first book.
Mm-hmm.
But it's too late to do anything about that now.
I've been seeing a lot of people rebranding some of their stuff, rebranding book 1, and honestly, 99 out of 100, I'm seeing these indie authors rebrand it, and I'm like, they knock it out of the park the second go around. I feel like it's that learning curve of like, who's the right people, where do I want to go through and pay, and is this the right amount of money? Like, knowing that information the second go around helps out a lot. And so I'm super excited to
I'm gonna use the same people. I use Mibble Art, which is a Ukrainian cover design company, but I feel like I didn't know kind of what I wanted, and with Envoys, and I like this cover. It's not bad. It definitely, people have told me it gives off a YA vibe, which I can understand, and like it doesn't quite really give you what is this story about. And like Pawns, same people, I felt like it really gave a much better like vibe of the story and just like had a more cinematic overall feel.
Mm-hmm.
And so Mayhem or Scoundrels, I've seen the first draft of that, and I'm really excited for that one because I like how it's turning out. And so I think the rebrand of Envoys is also going to have sort of a similar vibe, sort of like a little bit more cinematic in covers, and so like it's not just like here are the two main characters at the front, but like a little bit more like here is the world, and like the background's a little bit more exciting and not just here are some trees.
How many books are you thinking you're going to have in the series?
So it's kind of one of those things where I could do as many as I want to, because it's not really a series where there is like it's not like this is a trilogy. Here is where book 2 needs to go so that book 3 can complete things. It's more of like, here's this first adventure. Here's the second adventure. Here is a third adventure, to where like I could write as many adventures as I want to within the world. I would say I'll probably do 3 or 4 just because I don't have enough focus to read the series that have like a huge amount of books. If somebody's like, this is a 9-book series, I'm like, that sounds awesome. I probably am not going to get through all of those. To where like 3 or 4 I can do. To where I feel like in general, I'm not going to be ending books on cliffhangers. I'm not going to be doing like here is book 2 that doesn't actually like have any, like nothing is resolved because it's just here to get you to book 3. Like each book is kind of its own story, and then there are threads to lead to what could be the next book. Have you read the Gentleman Bastards books by Scott Lynch? Liza Lamora? I figured you probably had, but I had to make sure.
I love this series. This is one of my favorite series.
Same here.
Ever.
One of the things that he did so well was that like each one of the books, book 2 technically, like, yeah, it sort of ends on a little bit of a cliffhanger, but I feel like I don't even care if he doesn't write another book, because I feel like each one of his books kind of ends in a way where you're like, you don't need another book. Yeah, you want one because the characters are great, but it's not like this, oh, without another book, all of these unanswered questions will never be answered. Like each one is kind of its own story, and I like that. I think Michael J. Sullivan does the same thing really well with his books. Obviously, as you get to like the 5th and 6th books, it sort of is a little bit more focused on like the overarching problem. But a lot of those early ones, it's all about like a specific adventure with those characters. Yeah, and that's what I like those more, because it's more like, here is a story with these characters. Here's another story with these same characters.
Right. I cannot agree more with you, Lucas. I'm super hyped. Have you read Dresden Files, Dave?
I've read one. I got really, really burnt out on urban fantasy about 4 or 5 years ago, and I haven't done much since then, because I read a bunch of it, and it started all blending together.
I get that.
I think I read a lot of urban fantasy in like from 2018 to 2021, and it just all started to just kind of be the same book. And I had to be like, I can't read any more of this for a while.
It is Dresden. It's 18, 19 books. It's a lot. It took me years to get through them all, but I loved it. It's one of those, like, I was like, I'll read one a month until I catch up. And it was fantastic. I want to pivot. Michael J. Sullivan. Have you read all of his books, or have you only read the original?
I've read Riria Revelations, and I've read about half of the Riria Chronicles, the next series, with like more the origin story ones. Yeah. I feel like those are like kind of like the original ones. He has some books that hit more than others. There's been a few that I was like, I don't know if I love that plot line all that much, but in general, I love the characters. I've read the first 2 books of his, like Age of Myth,
Legend.
yeah, and it was
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah.
And I haven't read the newest one, which is like Ashrodin is one of them.
Is it Ezra Hardin? Is that
Ezra
which one?
Hardin and like Nolan and like
Ez-
those ones. I have not read
Mhm.
those yet. They're on my list because I really enjoy his writing. I definitely like. I'll say he has like 1 or 2 books per series that I'm kind of like, meh, this one's okay. The second book in the Riri of Revelations, the one where they're like out on the edge of the world with like the monster of sorts that they don't know what it is that's killing people.
Mhm.
It's like it's okay. It's an okay book, but it
Yeah.
didn't quite hit like some of the other ones. And I think that's the second book in his Riri Chronicles was called like The Rose and the Thorn.
Mhm.
And it was, I felt like that one was like, how can I try to connect all of these characters to where they all knew each other before? And for me, I was just like, oh no, please,
Mhm.
no, on some of those moments, just like too many connections too early. It's like the prequel mistake. And that's one of the things I tried to like not have. Like the only character in Pawns that is in Envoys is Cork. And then I will say one of the other characters is going to be in some of the later books in the series, but she is more of like a background minor character who's going to pop up, but not like, she actually has been there all along. And it's like, basically, I don't want it to be a thing where like everything constantly always connects
Right.
because life isn't like
That was my issue with the prequel series. I don't get me wrong. The second they come out, I go through and read them because I just support everything Michael J. Sullivan does. But it's like I don't need everything to connect. You don't got to give me a backstory for every single thing that they've said. Just give me a good story. But
And like the Star Wars prequels did the same thing, where like George Lucas tried to connect every single thing, and it's just like that's so dumb. Like at points, you're just like, stop trying to connect things,
mhm.
please.
Right, right. But if I can push, Ezra Houghton was a standalone. You can read it by
Mhm.
itself, and it was gold, man. It was so
All
good.
right, I've
It was
got
so good.
Nolan and Ezra Houghton. I have both of those books. I just haven't read them yet.
They were Nolan's pretty good. Nolan was good. And then Fairlane broke my soul. It was so good. Like if you want a book that's like gonna break you,
Uh-huh.
Fairlane, definitely since you've read all those other stories, Fairlane really hits you in the feels. And then Ezra
I
Hardin is just like I love Ezra Hardin. So having a full book of him and
He
getting
was
his
so cool in the original
so
books.
much
Yeah,
fun.
I
So
am.
much fun.
I need to get to the later books in the Riri Chronicles because I've heard really good things about like the 5th and the 6th book in that series. Like
Uh,
um,
the Disappearance of Winter's Daughter was fantastic. That was the fourth one. And
I think
then
that's the one I need to read next.
and then Drumendor is
Right,
um
that's the one right there that I want to read that one definitely.
it has a Casablanca feel.
Mhm.
And so if you're a fan of
I
Casablanca,
love Casablanca.
you're going
Yeah,
to go through and be like, "Oh, they took so much reference from that movie and tossed it into this book." And it is just like
nice.
it's so good. So much fun. So much fun. And yeah, I'm patiently waiting cuz I went through and did the Kickstarter in 2023 for the whole prequel series.
I've thought about doing that, and it's like I can't afford that.
Well, I got it in March of 2023 and I've gotten one of 5 books. So it has been I'm just sitting here patiently waiting to get those books. But they look gorgeous, man. They look great. Super super amazing. So, all right. That was all right, so we talked about and we make sure I hit all the marks. We talked about Jane Austen. We talked about how we keep our hair so nice and we went through and talked about Michael J. Sullivan. I feel like that was the big reason for the talk
We do
today.
have one more, which is Beasties Part 3. The
Oh,
story I wrote.
awesome.
This is your story
Awesome.
after the events of the last one. So, if you're ready for that, I will.
Let's go for it. I'm ready for it. I'm ready
Right,
for the
so
chaos.
for anyone who hasn't seen the original, basically the bearded book beast, Chris and Big Bird, were enemies, and then they became best friends. And they did sort of a news team from Anchorman style throwdown where they killed the other booktubers. So they killed Rowdy. They killed this other guy. I can't remember his name. Scott, some other character. And then they thought they killed Josh. But no. Josh was still alive. Josh awoke in the hospital bed. The last thing he remembered was Big Bird looming over him, the bird's sickening cackle, Chris's nod of assent, and then darkness. Rowdy and that other booktube guy were dead. Only Josh was left, and he knew what had to be done. Big Bird and Chris would pay for their crimes against humanity, against booktube, against Josh. He blinked back a tear, thinking of Rowdy. What a good friend he'd been. A true gentleman. And that other guy. Yeah, he was. Anyway, Josh had work to do. His first order of business was getting stronger. He traveled to his secret lair, a basement gym of sorts, where he trained day and night, a la Oliver Queen. It was the only way to defeat Big Bird. As Josh trained, 80s metal played in the background. After hours of blood and sweat, but surprisingly few tears, Josh was ready. He took his trusty katana and went to Chris's headquarters. Today, Big Bird would bleed. Unsheathing his katana, Josh knocked on the door of the headquarters. He'd expected Chris or Big Bird to confront him on his arrival, but the headquarters seemed deserted. "Hello," he called. "Anyone home?" "Hello, beastie." Big Bird's gravelly voice came from a hidden speaker. "Did you bring the pizza?" What? "You're the delivery guy, right?" Josh saw his chance. Yeah, got your pizza right here." A door opened out of nowhere right in front of Josh. He gripped his katana harder, took a deep breath, and entered. And there was Chris, bearded, holding a book, looking like a beast. And there was Big Bird, blood dripping from his fangs. A crumpled form lay beneath him, dying. An indie author, no doubt. This one had a glorious hairline and probably could have been a male model, at least before Big Bird got a hold of him. Big Bird hated indies. He'd once split an author named Zach in half, just for fun. "You're not the pizza guy," Big Bird snarled. "Josh?" Chris asked. "What are you doing here? Who is that guy?" Josh pointed to the dying author. "Oh, that's Nick," Big Bird said. "He refused to write a sequel. So we ended him." You're alive," Chris said. He seemed almost happy to see Josh. "Not for long," Big Bird added. "Prepare to die." "Wait," Chris said. "We can work this out." A feathered punch to the gut ended Chris's plea. "I've been waiting for this," Josh said. "Training, working, all for the day when I'd come before you and get my vengeance. In fact, all those days of toil are finally worth it. I have prayed at the altar of... not to interrupt, but you bored me to death. Let me just kill you." "Fine." Josh raised the katana and charged. To be continued.
Oh, man. Oh, man. I love it. I love it. Seriously, we need to put, when you're finished with this, the story of Big Bird, it's like we need to put it into like a legit book and put it together and sell it. I would put it behind me.
I tried to print off a thing of Big Bird at I think my printer was broken, so I printed it off at Staples, and I'd printed the first story of Big Bird to send to Chris because he bought a copy of the book and I was gonna send him. So I sent that with it, and they called and they're like, we can't print the Big Bird. That's copyrighted material. And I'm like, oh my God, these people are looking like, why did this guy write fan fiction about Big Bird and this guy named Chris? And I'm like, okay, that's fine. Just don't print the Big Bird on there. Just print the rest of it. But
oh, you're that guy. Yeah, anytime you go in the Staples, it's like, that's the Big Bird guy.
the thing is, everything else I printed at Staples was like when my wife and I were getting married, I printed off like the bookmarks, and then we made like a Mad Lib, and so like all of this different like sort of the fun stuff for the wedding. And so like I think they just think like this guy is weird. He's always printing off something weird. Like why can't he just print off like documents or something?
Right. What does this guy do? Like just write love stories of Big Bird. Oh my goodness, that's great. Oh man.
Scott, maybe you're actually still alive and no one knows. You know, you could be.
Someone did a an animated thing on YouTube. I cannot recall who did it.
That was Scott.
That was Scott? Scott's the man. So cool. Oh man, I must have watched it like 20 times, just laughing harder and harder every time I watched it. It was so good. It was so good. Oh man, that was amazing. I appreciate that, Dave. That was that made my day. My cheeks hurt. That's always fun. So yeah, we talked about your upcoming project. Super excited. Do you have a name about your sci-fi?
I sort of have one. I'm not like announcing it yet because it might not stick. But basically, sci-fi adventure, same kind of humor, but set in space. Trying to like write it and be like, okay, don't make it exactly the same, but in space, like change some things. But it's gonna have my sense of humor because I'm writing it. But I think it'll be fun. That one won't be coming out for a while, but I'm just sort of working on it.
Perfect. So yeah, how can people go through and connect with you, Dave? How can people find your book? How can people go through and support you?
I am on Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, Blue Sky. I think those are the ones that I'm on. D Lawson author on all 4 of those. You know, connect with me, follow me. If you want to buy my books, I sell signed copies on my website, which is davelawsonauthor.com. Those come to you with like little bookmarks and other stuff like swag that I print out and make usually. So that's one way you can. That's the way I mean, I make the most money off of that if you buy directly from me. They're also on Amazon, Kindle Unlimited. You can buy paperbacks and hardcovers on there, even though why would you do that whenever you could pay the same amount of money and get a signed copy from me? Just saying. And Audible, Envoys is on there. Pawns will be on there pretty soon. You can buy my paperbacks and hardcovers anywhere. Like they're on all the other, because they are wide. The ebook is Amazon only and the audio is Amazon only. But basically, even if you already have my books or you've read my books, one of the best ways you can support me is like tell some friends, tell them, you know, you might like this book. It's fun, you know, spread the word, leave a review, anything like that. Those are the things that indie authors, we can't make it without visibility. And yeah, selling books is great, but also like the visibility and finding readers is better. So like telling someone, hey, you should check this book out. Hey, I have a copy of this book. Would you like to borrow it and read it? When you finish, you should leave a review because that helps out authors or something. Just like visibility, tell a friend, not just about my book, about any indie author books that you've read. Tell somebody about it. You know, make a blog post about it or tag them on social media, send them a message telling them something you loved about their book. That's the kind of stuff that keeps us going.
Perfect. Well, Dave, I really do appreciate it. It has been a blast. My cheeks hurt. I was laughing so hard. Thank you for everyone in the chat. All of you made this conversation even better. You guys are hysterical. I will have all of Dave's information down in the description. Go through as little as go through and leave a comment if you're going through and read it. If not, I promise you, going through, start out with his books. They're fantastic. You're going to have a great time. Thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to like, subscribe. You know what to do. I appreciate all of you. Until next time, stay overbooked.
Thank you, everybody.
Bye.